Hello guys, it is me, the Tank, and next here. And today we're gonna be starting talking about Italian tanks for the First World War. There's not many. Italy, they did have some degree of industrialization, but they didn't really have that many mechanized vehicles in their army in World War One. And what they did have was more restricted to armored cars and um that sort of thing. And they fought a lot in the Alps, so vehicles weren't the best in mountainous conditions. So I can't really blame them for that. But they did try to make a tank towards the end of towards the end of the war, and this is what we're going to be talking about today: the Fiat 2000. So talking about the design first, it weighed about 40 tons and was around the same width as length as the Mark IV, though obviously taller with the whole turret thing, and it had basically two layers. While it was the same dimensions, roughly, width, length as the Mark IV, it weighed 12 times heavier. So yeah, it wasn't very fast either. It only went about 2 miles an hour, or 2.5 miles an hour at best, which is about half as fast as the standard at the time. So this thing was incredibly slow. The driver is actually seated in the front, and he has actually really great frontal visibility and some decent side visibility, which was pretty strange for the time when tanks basically you couldn't see anything if you were driving it. The engine compartment is really weirdly placed in that it's not in the back of the tank or in a separate compartment. It's basically totally inaccessible to the crew in general, being under them. So I don't know why they would design the tank like that, but oh well. It has 20 millimeter frontal armor and 15 millimeter side armor, which is pretty decent for the time. It's okay. Though for a really heavy tank like this, I'd kind of expect more armor, but I guess they wanted it to move more than 1 mile an hour. Speaking of, it had a 47-mile operational range on roads, which, because the Mark IV had 35 miles and the A7B had 19 to 50 miles operational range, and that wasn't on roads, that was in the field. So this thing is definitely falling behind that chance, so it's slower than them and it can't go as far. Though at the same time, it, I don't know, it also isn't really that well armed. I mean, it has a single 65/17 Modelo 13 cannon on a top turret, which does fully rotate, by the way. So it's, the second tank ever produced and adopted to actually have a fully rotating turret. And then it has 9 Fiat Revelli Modelo 1914 machine guns, 2 on each side, 3 in the back, and 2 in the front, which is really well armed for the time. But I mean, it basically served the role as a tankette and a mail tank perfectly. It could destroy anything that came in its path basically. But and I guess that makes up for its low mobility. But I don't know. I'd kind of expect more from a tank, which is literally a vehicle designed to be mobile. Onto the history of the tank. So basically, the Fiat Automobile Company, which would basically be one of Italy's main tank and arms producers, even up to World War II, was busy tasked with designing a tank in 1916 because with the introduction of the British land ships, Italy wanted some designs to actually build an armored force. On June 21st, 1917, a very early prototype was displayed to a military commission. It had a wooden mock-up with an open turret, no superstructure, and a dummy gun. The only thing it really showed off was the completed mechanical systems. The superstructure was only completed in 1918, 2 years later, so the Fiat just took its sweet-ass time on this thing. It designed in World War One. By the time the 2 prototypes were completed, it was really too late for them to be used. A March order of 50 was placed, but they were canceled by the armistice and just left with only 2 prototypes. The brand new Renault FT also likely had some effects on the cancellation because this thing just looked totally obsolete compared to that. As for the military service, while it was never even built during World War One, the prototypes were still labeled as the weapons "quote unquote" used to defeat the enemy because you might as well just lie to the public, right? The 2 prototypes completed were sent to Libya to fight guerrilla forces as part of the first Batteria Autonoma Carri de Assalto. I am so sorry for butchering that. Which additionally consisted of these 2 and then some French tanks they got. So likely a few FTs, maybe a Saint Chamond. I think Italy did have a Saint Chamond, yeah. In Libya, the tank proved a speed of 2.5 miles an hour, which is pitiful even for that time. And this basically caused the Korean Libya to be cancelled after only 2 months because Libya was a guerrilla war at that time. The rebels there just were constantly moving and this thing literally just couldn't keep up. It's really hard to use a vehicle when the vehicle can't see who's shooting it or arrive at the battle in time. And then what's really interesting is that one tank remained in Tripoli, down in Africa, I think, or maybe southern Italy. I'm not sure on geography. I'm sorry. While the other was sent back to Italy in the spring of 1919. Here it performed before the King, Victor Emmanuel III, at Rome Stadium. Yeah, why not? It did have an impressive display. It climbed a 1.1 meter wall, then it faced a 3.5 meter tall wall, which it literally just knocked over. It knocked over some trees and also crossed 3 meter tall, 3 meter wide trench, not wench. The performance, however, really failed to revive any interest in the tank, with the King not really being impressed. The tank from the performance was literally just left in a storage depot until it was sent to Forte Tiburtino in the orders of Colonel Maltese. In 1934, it actually participated in a Capodux parade. Here it had a new paint job, and the 2 forward machine guns were replaced with 2 37 40mm guns. Reportedly, it was transformed to a monument in Bologna, but after that, its fate is unknown. Same with the tank that was left in Tripoli, so we really have no idea what happened to this thing. Honestly, it might just be sitting in some warehouse somewhere collecting dust, and maybe we'll find it in 50 years and then put it in a museum. We don't really know. As to the final settlements of this thing, this tank is a really good idea, or a really good example of a tank that was literally just made too late. Its design is pretty amazing for the time. I mean, yeah, its speed is really slow, and the engine compartment is just badly placed. The rest of this design, though, is pretty great for World War I. It houses a turret, the only turreted tank really designed and built during or slightly after World War I, other than the Renault FT. It has enough machine guns to destroy any enemy infantry, and the cannon is powerful enough to destroy anything else. Along with, having a turret is just an automatic plus. However, it was just made far too late. By this point, heavy breakthrough anti-trench tanks were just no longer needed. And the Renault FT convinced most nations to just copy the FT or buy it rather than making original designs. Heavy tanks like the Mark IV just look totally obsolete in compared to the FT. And Italy followed this logic because they later made the Fiat 3000, which is an Italian FT. Not to mention its deployment in Libya just wasn't a good situation to it. It's too hot there. The terrain is too rugged, though it really does show off its underpowered nature. And an enemy that was just far too mobile compared to static trench warfare. The Fiat 2000 just came too late and missed its opportunity to succeed. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next time we'll be seeing the first Ansaldo tank. If you know Ansaldo, they made a lot of tanks during World War II and the inner warriors for Italy. So yeah, see you guys then.